Good morning, everyone. Welcome to God's Grace on Thee and Angel Wallace Productions. Today is Sunday. It is the 1st of December of 2024. Today I would like to read from the Phoenix Journals, Antichrist, Volume 4, by Gheorghe Sedes-Hatton, the Phoenix Journal. Chapter 1. Recording number 1, Hatton, Saturday, February the 28th of 1998, 7:32 a.m. year 11, day 196. Old new stuff. From our Arab oil friends, I ask that the information on the early dealings with the Arab nations offered several years ago, first by Lindsay Williams, on such as Chase Manhattan Bank, be run for their direct information. Next, I want to offer this bit of material for all of you who invest, expect to win something financially, do business with these big banks. Actually, no choice about that, and never seem to see handwriting scratched like nasty graffiti everywhere. Quoting, high-stakes derivatives. Chase Manhattan leads the derivative speculation bubble, with 62 in derivatives for every dollar in iniquity capital. Chase alone has a derivative exposure equal to the U.S. annual gross domestic product. A Bank for International Settlements survey shows 79 financial institutions with a collective $82.6 trillion in derivatives, banking's highest risk venture. End of quoting. How many times do you have to be raped, pillaged, and plundered before you get the point, world? It is no longer Saudi Arabia, the USA, or it is you, and it is now. May God help you all. In Spotlight, March 2nd, 1998, page 3, is an editorial that I feel is so excellent that I would like to share it with you in this time of total insanity. Then I would like to share a front page story on the Arabs. And thirdly, I would like you to note a commentary on page 3 of that issue of Spotlight. But I don't have time to reprint it here. Now my focus is on the author of that article, Michael Collins Piper, author of Final Judgment. And that's available through Liberty Library in Washington, D.C. I believe that Michael has done some of the best work in researching some of the most chaotic topics of your day, and in this commentary has proven himself again at the top of my list. We will see if we can squeeze it in somewhere this week for you who can't get Spotlight. And that was a quote from an editorial in the newspaper Spotlight on March 2nd of 1998. Insanity as foreign policy. Now, as the Spotlight alone among every other newspaper in the United States of America has said from its first issue in 1975, and as its publisher, Liberty Lobby, has said for almost 43 years, this country's foreign policy is fundamentally disastrous. The one and only correct foreign policy for the United States is non-intervention in the affairs of other nations. Now, this policy was first laid down by George Washington. It was sane, sensible, and correct then, and is even more so now. America's interventions into other nations' wars have brought us nothing of value, and contrarily, almost all of the troubles, foreign and domestic, that we now have. Interventionism, internationalism, is totally flawed and unworkable, and in the end, it has to result in America's absorption into a world government, a turbulent morass of calamity, chaos, violence, and tyranny, with American sovereignty, a fondly remembered dream in the minds of a few still able to think rationally. It means the end of the Constitution, American law, American standards and values, and in the end of the American language. The full results of internationalism are so horrid to contemplate that most Americans prefer to look the other way. And at this writing, we stand on the verge of being commanded into another aggressive war, a war against Iraq, which has absolutely nothing to recommend it insofar as our national interests are concerned. So this war is totally the product of the demands of the leaders of a foreign nation and American traitors, Zionists and Zionist kissers, who put the imagined interests of a foreign nation above ours. And in many editorials, we have warned about the irresponsible stupidity of fighting other nations, wars in which we have no legitimate interest whatsoever. Strangely and sadly, no other publication in the entire expanse of America has joined with us. Amazing, eh? True. Everyone is out of step but us. No, this is not true. There are many papers just like this one, Contact, that has taken all the same blows as has Spotlight, while every effort conjured has been thrown against us to get us deaded. We honor and support Spotlight, but we can't just let the accusation of no other stand without objection, for we can name 10 to 12 other publications doing the very best they can, although I think they might well be considered newsletters or magazines. We also have regular journals, but we're not in this paper, a magazine or pamphlet. We have sometimes as many as 90 pages in our weekly publication, and in our home state we are considered a fully fledged, tax-wise, and that must mean something, newspaper. We are not tax-free or non-profit, although we have never made it to the ranks of even so, much as paying our way. We had to decide whether to have a paper with truth or a rag with nothing of value, and we chose truth. So the facts are that Spotlight refused to run any advertisements for Contact as being too radical and far out. This was when George Green was still here, and we had such inside information as to boggle minds. You can't have it both ways. Our people have been shot at, blasted by helicopter lasers, the property seized, brought into court in a dozen different matters, and from some who claim to be the highest level of Christian. One nice Christian leader said the churches would drive us out of town for considering that we were also Christians. They left nice messages on machines calling my writer a slimy puke. And another few who said, be concerned every time you turn on your car ignition and say goodbye. Our editor has been around the block a few times and has had top-level research jobs in major places, along with holding several doctorate degrees in physics, engineering, and science. And we, like Spotlight, which we have supported from upstart with both advertising and funds, we don't make a big deal of it. We'll hang in there until all we hounds are hanged, or we develop incentive of people to wake up and do something. And yes, we do know the way and have the way if such as Spotlight would bother to listen. All of us out here in the hinterlands beyond the Beltway are struggling every hour of every day to do something to thwart the takeover plans of the New World Israeli Zionist order. We would welcome a bit of help. However, we have learned very well not to expect it. So if not us, who? No politician, no leader of any sort has had the guts to say what is right for America. And believe it or not, the establishment is locked securely within iron chains of Zionist command. No one dares to say the obvious, the truth. Of course, the limp, corrupt, and lying news media, including every great daily paper in America, has gone along totally with the screams for American aggression, American genocide, for the sole purpose of backing up the aggressive designs of the gangster leaders of Israel. The religious spokesmen such as Jerry Falwell, Pat Robertson, Billy Graham ad nauseum are perhaps the worst of the bunch. Their tongues are so sore from licking the boots of their Israeli masters they can hardly even explain that they hope that American intervention against Iraq will result in the Battle of Armageddon and the massacre of millions. These lunatics seriously believe that such a horror is foredoomed by their interpretation of an obscure passage in the Bible. People like this deserve a straitjacket in a padded cell, not an audience of impressionable American Christians. In this morass of deceit, corruption, and evil, we are glad to welcome the opposition of the leaders of Saudi Arabia and Egypt to Israel-Clinton war plans. In spite of the bribes and lavish wooing by Missy Half-Bride and her distinguished superior Zipper Clinton, they're united in saying, get out of the Mideast and leave it to we who live here. Our intervention and aggression against Iraq is not merely a repudiation of everything America stands for and a continued violation of sanity in foreign relations. It can only wreak evil for this country. We covered in this aspect in our editorial on page 17 on February the 9th. Urge you to read it over again. It further explains insanity as foreign policy. So the Arab world unites against the United States. Now this is written by Martin Mann. National integrity wilting. Once upon a time, America was the only country the Arabs trusted. Then our government lost its integrity. The Arabs did not trust the Germans, who were unknown newcomers. Neither did they trust the British, who were too well known. And the only outsiders they trusted were, believe it or not, Americans. In the Killbox Hatton, this may well be questioned, but this is Mr. Mann's article, not mine. I had never fully realized the extent of the prestige and popularity we Yanks enjoyed among the Muslims. They freely gave us information and help. We were the only people who never had to resort to bribery to get the Arabs to do something special for us. These are excerpts from the memoirs of Kenneth Pendar, a Massachusetts-born intelligence officer who served as a U.S. secret agent during World War II in various Arab countries from early 1941 through the late summer of 1943. The Arabs also admired our apparently boundless power, but did not fear it, because even the most unlettered among them somehow knew that Americans were kindly people who would never join the long list of their oppressors and exploiters. This sense of power and admiration clung like an invisible halo even to the lowly control officers such as myself, Pendar wrote. More than half a century after the young intelligence officer recorded these gratifying observations, the vast Islamic world's proven reserves of goodwill, trust, and admiration for America had been squandered by a succession of abjectly pro-Israel administrations. The extent to which the U.S. has forfeited the respect and the support of both leaders and ordinary people from Lebanon all the way to the oil-rich, strategically vital Gulf has been strikingly brought home in recent days. When just about every Arab opinion maker and publication denounced the Clinton administration's military preparations, in the Killbox Hatton, bet your controlled media didn't tell you all this, did they? And no, I am not an American. I am a universal citizen in authority over quite a few more cosmic attitudes and endeavors. I am, however, an equal opportunity employer, but the pay is not much. Just freedom, honor, integrity, and citizenship in a rather unique geographical location. In legal terms, the use of force against Iraq amounts to brutal, unequivocal aggression. Clinton has no international authority, let alone a UN mandate for such an attack, proclaimed Dr. Hassan Nafa, a respected Egyptian legal analyst and commentator. A strike against Iraq will be a rehearsal for one against Iran, warned Rose El-Youssef, the Import Gulf Daily, in a conclusion that was widely shared by Islamic policy analysts. Call for unity. In an unprecedented call for Islamic unity, a number of editorials urged that Arab nations abandon ancient regional rivalries and join forces with Iran against the U.S. military intervention. Now, Iran must warn the U.S. that Iraq will not be alone if it is forced to fight. So if the Arabs and Iran act together, some sense may enter the head of the U.S. president, urged Al-Shab and other major Gulf publication. A peaceful settlement of the Iraqi crisis is the only way to prevent the Middle East from sinking into chaos, asserted Al-Alham, Egypt's moderate online daily, regarded as the largest and the most influential publication in the Arab world. There is no truth in the U.S. claim that Iraq must be bombed in order to diminish its capability to threaten its neighbors, Al-Ahram noted. In reality, every Arab state, with the dubious exception of Kuwait, opposes such attack. In the kill box hat on, note that Kuwait is totally controlled by Israel, Bush, Britain. By the way, these nasties have to bomb one of you nice Arab states to get Armageddon going for the Zionist Israel. It is known that neither Arabs nor Allah will allow such abuse and lopsided victory again and again for these Antichrist gods of the oil business. The Arabs will oppose any such military intervention, even if the UN Security Council comes around to endorsing it, cautioned Al-Ahram. Because the loss of U.S. leadership and moral authority has also undermined the World Forum's influence in the Islamic world. The U.S. has hijacked the UN Security Council and strong-armed it into an Israeli-inspired strategy of all-out war against Islam. The influential newspaper told its millions of readers. Al-Ahram is published in English and French editions, as well as Arabic. As for Iraq, the UN is now attempting to induce the international community to legitimize Iraq's destruction by the U.S. As for Israel, the UN aims to ensure that all is still and quiet as Palestine is destroyed. Both rivers flow to one sea. Israeli hegemony in the region, concluded Al-Ahram on the 17th of February. In the kill box, Hatton writes, "Right on, and as always there is a distancing of what appears to be the U.S. administration and Israel's Mr. Yahoo et al. This is so typical that when it happens, you know a biggie is about to drop on you. And worse, this time, when the Yahoos came calling, even the Jewish community denied him their shekels. But he went to the evangelist leader Jerry Falwell and got not only a commitment for a long-term alliance, but immediate and big financial backing." Israel indicted, dismissing another attempted U.S. justification for bombing Iraq, the claim that Saddam Hussein is in violation of some UN resolutions. The newspaper Al-Musawwar pointed out that Israel has not only ignored UN resolutions, but it has also refused to implement agreements signed on the White House lawn in the presence of the United States President. But Israel is America's darling, Al-Musawwar asserted, and the Arabs are expected to prostrate themselves and thank the U.S. for the presence of the poor little Israel, which possesses only 300 nuclear warhead arsenals of chemical weapons and the latest warplanes, the heaviest battle tanks, and the longest range guns. End of quoting. I don't think I could add much to this information except perhaps to tell you that Israel won't have that many weapons if they can get you to start a war, for the plan is to dump those weapons of mass destruction all over the globe, beginning with wiping out the Middle East and Arab world and then moving on to other fish in bigger kettles. Dharma, I believe Mr. Piper's commentary is so important as to take the time to repeat it here for our readers and hopefully for those friends we have out there in Arab land and in the global community. And yes, what you must do, all of you, is join within a global community and never mind the United Nations of the Israel, U.S., Britain with colonies coalition. For goodness sakes, please put it outside the United States and off of Rockefeller land, and never mind collecting dues which bind you more deeply from the United States and allies. You do not have to have a war to gain peace and prosperity. You need a godly community based on right values and morality. Quoting, JFK Clinton parallels in Middle East. Now, some interesting questions are being raised about the how and why of the behind-the-scenes forces that are pressuring President Bill Clinton to take action against Saddam Hussein. Commentary by Michael Collins Piper for Spotlight, dated March the 2nd of 1998. Once upon a time, there was a popular young American president who was bound and determined to prevent a scrappy Middle East state from developing weapons of mass destruction. The American president reportedly had an eye for the ladies, despite his marriage to a high-profile first lady who publicly remained loyal to her husband. The young president became engaged in a high-stakes, behind-the-scenes game of diplomacy and power politics to achieve his goal of preventing a nuclear buildup in the Middle East. However, an American president's Middle East counterpart remained intransigent and refused to buckle under. The leader of the Middle East state was determined to make his nation a nuclear power. The American president be damned. So far, the story sounds awfully familiar with and quite timely. Is it Bill Clinton and Saddam Hussein we're talking about? No, we're talking about John F. Kennedy and Israeli Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion. We know how the saga of John F. Kennedy came to a close. He was shot and killed in Dallas, and upon his death, his successor, Lyndon B. Johnson, turned a blind eye and allowed Israel's controversial nuclear weapons development program to move forward, not only unimpeded, but covertly assisted by pro-Israel elements in the American CIA. Although it is an open secret that Israel has developed a massive nuclear arsenal in contravention of John F. Kennedy's wishes, Israel has never signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and continually refuses to do so. Israel officially denies that it has nuclear weapons, and therefore, so Israel's partisans say Israel has no reason to sign such a declaration. And in the meantime, However, Iraq under Saddam Hussein has signed the treaty, and yet, as a consequence of Israeli pressure, there is an ongoing campaign by pro-Israel partisans who dominate policy making in the Bill Clinton administration to force Saddam to open up his own weapons arsenal to the United Nations inspection. And if Saddam refuses to abide by these demands, it is threatened. Saddam and the people of Iraq will be subjected to a massive military assault. In the kill box, Hatton, it must be inserted here that now there is supposedly an ongoing CIA mission, read Mossad, to get Saddam himself. This is not the first time, and the other time this was so botched as to catch the U.S. shooting down U.S. planes. These pigs from these intelligence quarters even blow up our own things to make it appear as if they have been damaged. It has happened over and over and over again, from ships to gassings, even to a so-called Holocaust, which did not happen as it has been projected through the next half a century. Incredible situation. What makes the situation all the more incredibly ironic is that the so-called ABC gang in the Clinton administration, Albright, Berger, and Cohen, all have ethnic and emotional attachments to Israel, and as a consequence, have no regard for the desires and interests of the Christian and Muslim people of both Iraq and the U.S. And incidentally, what few Americans know, with the exception of spotlight readers in the kill box, confound it, wrong again, is that Iraq has one of the most highest percentages of Christians among its diverse peoples. In the kill box, Hatton, and these might well be considered Christ eons, and not the diverted false Christians, as to that has come to be for almost all of the Christian religions since before the Crusades, and man-made inquisitions of Satan. The most of the alien false Christians reside in the United States of America, now under control of the Antichrist, calling themselves Christians and Judeans. How do I know? I know Christ. And some of the oldest Christian churches in the world exist in Iraq today, although at least one of the most prominent ones was bombed to rubble by American planes during the last Persian Gulf War. Now, this fact was reported exclusively by the Spotlight's editor, Andrew Arnold, following his fact-finding mission to Iraq in the wake of the Gulf War. In the kill box, Hatton, oh my goodness, here comes another reminder. The flag of Israel bears a blue star of David and the 2 blue stripes. I again remind you, the stripes represent the Euphrates River and the Tigris River, with full public notice that all lands between the two will be the property of Israel. This represents the blue turban of the Antichrist of Nostradamus, good friends. In addition, the aliens from out there somewhere came in Christness to your place in that area of Iraq once known as Sumaria, among other places. Not relevant at this writing, but we'll get there if you stay tuned in. And no, I don't care who has told you something else. Scary scenario. One can only imagine the reaction among the adherents of Israel in America if President Clinton's 3 top foreign policy advisors in the kill box Hatton states, read rulers, handlers, and controllers, were Americans of Arab descent, and there would be cries of conflict of interest from the major media and demands for a balance in foreign policy making. But President Clinton's top advisors are not Arab Americans. If Saddam Hussein must be forced to open his arsenal for inspection Should not the same be required of Israel, so as to ensure that Israel will never use its nuclear weapons against some enemy, real or perceived? Is that question illogical, or does it simply run contrary to what is politically correct to say and think in America today? Should we not also be concerned about Israel's potential use of weapons of mass destruction? Is the ongoing sex and perjury scandal that the media has been hanging over the head of President Clinton actually a high-level operation designed to force the president's hand on behalf of Israel and against Saddam? Hat on in the kill box. Yes, indeed. Frank Gaffney, director of the Center for Security Policy in Washington, has suggested that it would seem at a minimum that the president has been in a compromised position, one that was susceptible to exploitation by a foreign intelligence service. Now, it's known, for example, that President Clinton has been accused by many of Israel's hardline right-wing forces of having turned his back on Israel, and that these accusations were erupting just prior to the media frenzy that accompanied the revelations of the president's relationship with White House intern Monica Lewinsky. In the kill box, Hatton states, "It is now said that Billy Zipper has said he had only a kissing relationship with Miss Lewinsky. Kissing what? And is hilarious, so trusting of her zipper Billy that she just stands by her man? No, if Billy goes, so goes Hillary, out of power and onto the scrap heap right alongside the dude with the zipper problem of long standing. No pun intended." Now, with this in mind, is it just a coincidence that the New York Times, the staunchest and most strident media voice promoting Israel's interest in America, is the one newspaper that most often has been linked to anti-Clinton leaks in the so-called Monica Gates scandal that threatens to bring down Bill Clinton? Is it likewise a coincidence that Newsweek, joined by its sister publication, The Washington Post, both published by the pro-Israel Meyer-Graham empire, which has long been close to the CIA, and its allies in the Mossad, has also been marshalling the media assault upon Clinton? If President Clinton fails to abide by Israel demands that Saddam be destroyed, will a smoking gun emerge in the scandal that will once and for all bring down Bill Clinton? In the kill box, Hatton. Well, it appears to me that about the only claim of life Billy has is his refusal to sign that order to war in this matter. Suiciding of this president might be even worse for these bastard pillagers than killing off Saddam at this time, but they will very well probably try it, for it has worked for the Clintons. Why not the enemies of Clinton? Old Vince Foster probably didn't really want his brains blown out either. These are just a few questions, among many others, that might be pondered as an American president once again finds himself trying to thwart a Middle East state from developing and perhaps using weapons of mass destruction. Hatton in the kill box. The brainwashed term set for your constant mental engraving. End of quoting. Please don't go away, readers, for when we next write, we will take up the protocols yet again. Many write and ask, why didn't you tell us all this information sooner? We did, and Nihilus offered the protocols in 1905 after they had already been around for a very long time. These topics from the International Jew were published in a public newspaper by Henry Ford in the early 1920s. Where have you been? The next protocols topic we shall speak about is on the Jewish plan to split society by ideas. And if you don't think these are dangerously timing, then go back to sleep, But please, don't call on God to save your assets when the final shackle is put upon you. And people, any blood that runs in the desert of Iraq is on your head. Know it. And what does this mean? It means that if you shed blood on that place, it shall be shed by you in your place. It is called universal law of cause and effect. Adonai.